Growing up as a kid in Oklahoma, where I'm from, the Chili Bowl is the biggest race that we have. The Chili Bowl has kind of been my favorite race of the year. Growing up a dirt racer in Oklahoma, that's kind of the holy grail.
This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
A 64-point swing perfectly illustrates the knife's edge that Dimmel is operating on. Phillip Island's draft-heavy racing eventually did the point leader in by slapping him with a 30th place finish. And though he holds 13 points over Sadro, Daniel has managed 4 podiums in the last 5 rounds. He keeps the pressure on, and he's certainly going to need to keep doing that today with the tricky and technical Zandvoort. Will his consistency pay off? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch round 9 of the Weekend Warriors, and you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel and the iRacing Esports Network. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Adam Young. Behind the scenes is our director, the Dr. Amjad Yaman, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Adam, the Dutch language might be a mouthful for most Americans like us, but at least their most famous racetrack provides us with a gorgeous beach.
I know, right? But that isn't going to help my, saying of the language at all because, well, I'm the famous butcherer of names, but that's a different story. Hey, Zandvoort here for today, and as Joe mentioned, right on the north coastline here in the Netherlands. I mean, it's a very beautiful facility, just looking at pictures and stuff of it online. Wish I could go there actually maybe one day. And hey, maybe if Formula One comes back like they're saying it might, that's a possibility. But Zandvoort started hosting Formula One races back in the 50s before they left, host numerous DTM races, other GT races, stuff like that, a few open-wheeler races, and that's where the track is now. Now, of course, with Formula One maybe coming back, might see some changes to it, but that's the iRacing curse there for you. The turn layout we're racing on here for today, 13 turns. We're going around 2.671 miles. Let's go ahead and take a lap around the SRF around Zandvoort.
All right, we're in the GSRC SRF, so let's do a lap around Zandvoort. Flying down towards Tarzan, expect this to be the most common place for people to get a pass done. The SRF will definitely be giving off a decent tow, and it's some hefty braking on your way into this hairpin. Since this car likes to understeer, you'll definitely want to square off the exit, and from there, you head towards Gerlach. This kink looks like not much on paper, but it's got lots of complexities. A blind rise, very little runoff, and it essentially blends right into the braking for Hugenholtz. This corner is basically a mirrored version of Tarzan, 180 degrees and steeply banked, except this time it's got a huge uphill climb on your way out of there. Carrying your momentum off of it will be a big deal because on your way through Slotemacher, you won't be lifting or braking. In fact, you won't reach for the binders until you hit Sheavlock. But if you think you'll be sending diving passes into here, you might be mistaken. This long, fast, sweeping turn requires little of the brakes and is frighteningly high commitment. From there, you come to the newer infield portion of the circuit. It starts with Masters, which is not only a pretty sharp turn, but lures you into understeering off its curved exit. Immediately, you hit Namlos, which despite being a hairpin, can be taken with more speed than you'd expect in the Spec Racer. Then you've got to quickly switch sides to get set up for Zondernam. It will be very important to get the throttle down early since it takes you onto one of the few decently long straights of the track. The racing line bleeds its way across to the left, and once you spot the rumble strips, you know it's time to hit the brakes once again. Hans Ernst is a finicky and tight chicane. It invites passing, but it's embarrassingly easy to tangle with your opponent since it switches back into this hairpin. Now you've really got to focus because the last real corner in the SRF is Kumho. You can get super greedy with the inside curb and it's still fair game. You've absolutely got to because you need to carry as much momentum as possible. Lyondike requires no lifting, so as you return to the pit straight, you're going to be building an immense amount of speed. This will make a big difference on whether you can defend or attack. But hopefully you've kept it all together and have now finished a lap around Zandvoort. There's yourself a lap around the beautiful dunes of Zandvoort, and while that may be a long ways away from Adam and I here in the States, one thing that isn't quite as far away is the Hallett Race Shop. The Weekend Warriors is brought to you by that Hallett Race Shop. It's located at the Hallett Racetrack near Tulsa, Oklahoma. They're a full-service SRF shop and an authorized customer service rep for SCCA Enterprises, and they're owners of the Hallett Racetrack. You can find more information at hallettracing.net if you want to check them out and maybe take some real life laps yourself around there if you're close enough. Now, the championship, as I mentioned, is getting interesting now. Only 13 points between Sadro and Dimmel. Sadro actually jumping up one spot over Jerry McAreevy with that last finish. He had another podium to his list of accomplishments. Donald Fitterer jumps up one from fifth back to fourth place. And then Elson, who's been doing very good in qualifying here today, finds himself falling to fifth in the points. Let's take a look at the Spec 2 championship. And Adam, where are we sitting for that?
Yeah, let's get those standings up. And hey, you know, it's been a pretty close race in the back part of the field for most of the season. That continues on. Ramon Regalado and then Ryan Sorrell, they trade spots between second and third, but still Donald Federer just running away with it here at this point. Even starting to see some separation between third and fourth. Now, Ed Doherty continues on a really good run. He's now up 6 spots, 114 points behind the leader. But Jim McGill down a spot, but he's still only 5 points back from fourth. So still lots of swapping around that could happen there. And not only the top 5, but the top 10 of the standings. So very competitive race in S2, but Donald Federer running away with it.
And if you've never watched the Weekend Warriors before, you're in for a treat today at this very difficult track. But here's what you are going to be watching. It is round 9 out of 12, and they do have some drop weeks. Those very much come into play into our points leader, Sven Demmel. We'll go over that in more detail a little bit later. The setups are open, and they have limited the fuel compared to what the real Spec Racer Ford can do. So we'll have one scheduled pit stop for fuel. They usually don't take tires in this series. And there you can see the points are rationed all the way to 25 points for last place. They have incident penalty points, not necessarily a incident limit in this series. They lose 3 points for every 10 incidents that they have out on track. They have a fast repair, and that has actually saved a few drivers and allowed the likes of Sven Demmel to sneak more wins in. So that could actually affect the racing out on track as we take a look at Jerry McAreevy, currently sitting P5 in the qualifying. Now, as always, you can watch the Weekend Warriors here on the iRacing Esports Network. live. And all you got to do to make sure that you catch it live is make sure that it shows up in your YouTube feed. Hopefully you don't make a mistake and not do that like Jerry just did out on track. Just go to their YouTube page, click on subscribe, and you'll get each week live in your YouTube feed. So it's a lot less of a draft track than we've had at a number of places so far this season. And it's actually a pretty fun track I found from doing my lap guide around here, Adam. It's kind of hit or miss for me around here on whether or not I enjoy it. And I think the SRF is really well suited to this place.
I did a few laps too just a little while ago. I mean, I'll admit, I'm perfectly honest, I've never actually ran this track that much in iRacing here before, never even called a race here before on GSRC, which is, okay, so hey, I'm a first timer. Can't say that very often anymore. But I have watched a few races here on TV and stuff, DTM in particular, and very, very interesting technical track. The one thing I think we're going to see for today's passing is going to be really tough. And of course, bring up the lift throttle oversteer all the time we talk about in these cars. Some of these corners are pretty sharply banked. And that's one thing that I noticed might catch some guys off guard with that lift throttle oversteer, is because this SRF doesn't seem like it wants to handle those bank corners very well. So you get off the gas and try to get through them, and it just tries to send you on around. So I think that's going to be a couple of things that we're going to be watching out for here today.
Certainly showing its old school roots. Not many modern courses really have that steep of a camber on road courses. David Gaspers has returned once again, formerly one of the most dominant drivers in this series. He's been missing out a little bit this season just because of other obligations. He's currently sitting in fourth, coming off of Lyondike now onto the main straight, one of the few places where you can actually catch the draft. He is on an outlap, though, so it looks like he won't be able to improve his time. And he just went by the pit entry, though. Now, I know this is your first time calling a race here, but I was warning you a little bit before about how we've had all kinds of chaos on that pit entry, Adam, in multiple different series and various different cars. And since pit stops are scheduled today, I'm a little bit worried for the drivers.
Yeah, and I was able to see that too in my practice laps, just seeing exactly what you were talking about. I mean, you got such a really good run up leading onto the front straightaway, and in that transition to get off the front straightaway to head to pit road is very sharp. And if you're tucked up behind somebody, they're getting ready to pit and they don't announce they're pitting, or if you miss that they announce that they're pitting, it could make things very interesting very quick. And you also brought up another point about pit exit. I mean, pit exit could be interesting.
Yeah, that dumps you right back into Tarzan, and there's really just no escape. You have to be on the ball, watch your F3 box, and make sure that you don't tangle with anybody. Same thing with cars already out there on track coming in once pit stops start taking place. This is our pole sitter currently, provisionally, with about 4 minutes left. Sven Dimmel didn't win last round. It was his teammate instead, Merrill, who managed to wind up on top. Sven now even more having to worry about any bad finishes, since he has no safety net below him with drop weeks. He comes across the line. Let's see what this one's going to be. A 2 flat, unfortunately, is definitely not going to do it for him, as his fastest is a 55.9.
So maybe he put a wheel off or something like that. But yeah, 2 minutes not going to get it done here. But granted, I mean, all it would do is just add a little bit more cushion. He already has about 2/10 lead over Jerry McAreevy as far as between 1 and 2. Looking at David Gaspers here. David Gaspers is second right now. Can he improve on his time? And looks like, yeah, he's able to pull in with a 1.83. Joe Aguilar now. Joe Aguilar's name I don't think we've seen too much here for this year, maybe a few times, but he is able to put down a 57.2. That's not going to improve his time at all.
Indeed, he's only got 2 timed laps in so far, so with just under 2 minutes to complete a lap, he's got to hustle. This is Sadro, currently second in the points championship. He's all the way down in 7th right now, though. Not good news for him. He just completed another lap, which did not improve. Let's see what Jerry McAreevy's got as he's coming around Lyondike. He's on the second row and only 9/1000ths behind Gaspers, so he only has to improve a tiny little bit, and he could be starting right next to Sven Demmel. His most recent lap is unfortunately a little bit slower. 57.8 won't do it.
Yeah, right now I'm wondering, in particular, Joe, with track temperatures starting to go up here as we go through qualifying, now looking at track temperature 104 degrees, if maybe Sven Demmel able to set that time very early on in qualifying, if that is going to help him quite a bit, because right now nobody's really getting close to that. No one's really improving on their times very much as we go through qualifying.
And Sven set his on his fourth lap, so it wasn't at the very, very beginning, but it was still, as you said, a little bit ago at this point, as he's got about 6 or 7 laps in. I'm checking to see if anybody... David Gaspers did set his fastest last time around to get him in his second, and he's actually gone faster now, so he is withstanding the heat.
Yeah, he's able to. That was another 800 shaved off there. So there, insert foot into mouth right there. That's a perfect case for that.
You make a good point, though. It is 104 now, and during practice it was, I think, at around 96, 97 degrees. So it's gone up a fair bit, and it is getting to be pretty hot under the shoreside sun. Steve Elson sitting in fifth.
And that's another point too, right there. Oh man, I tell you what, I don't know if we can go back about 30 seconds. I don't like doing replays in qualifying, but if we can, look at Adam Bradshaw's pit entry just a second ago, and you'll get the exact meaning of what we're talking about during the race as far as what pit entry could potentially bring here. So you're looking at, I didn't catch who the car was behind him, but Adam Bradshaw is going to come around Lyondike here. He's going to come down pit road as somebody's racing up behind him in the draft, and it ends up being a pretty close call. You're going to see right here on that replay screen, and this is going to be the kind of scene that we're going to see during the race here for today. So a little bit of evasive action there, and don't have a lot of time to take that evasive action.
That was Ryan Sorrell that nearly got into him. He was actually behind him in qualifying as well. Just 20 seconds left.
Real quick before qualifying ends, I want to make this point too. In this series, they run basically the time on a 2 times time scale. So what's going to happen here is as we go into the race, it's a 40-minute race, but as far as in the time and the dynamic sky that iRacing has, it'll actually be about 80 minutes. So we're going to go through peak heating of the day as the race goes along.
And the checkered flag has come out in qualifying. Jeff Jacobson was your first to complete. David Gaspers is going to abandon his final lap. Joe Aguilar, who we mentioned earlier, has gotten himself up to 9th. He'll be the next one to cross the line coming out of Lyondike onto the front stretch. It is flat out through that last corner, and he also will abandon his. So he's not happy with this last lap. What about Sadro? Second place in the points. He's in 7th still and still struggling. The number 51 is going to take his last lap. A 56.6 is his fastest so far. And he doesn't improve a 56.7, just a 10th off. See Jerry McAreevy coming up soon. He's sitting in 3rd. And Gaspers has improved his gap over McAreevy, but it's still not by a huge portion. 8/100ths of a second between David and Jerry. So can the 67 get himself up to that front row? He's been trying, and it looks like he won't because he's coming into the pits. I think the last one, last couple is going to be Bob Kern and Sven Demmel to finish their laps. Kern sitting down in 14th. Sven doesn't even really need to take the lap because he's the pole sitter and he's the last one around. So unless he really just wants to embarrass the field, here we ride on board with a New Yorker, the number 206 of Bob Kern. Back onto that front stretch. What's it going to be from that 57.6 on his second lap to no improvement, a 58.5 for him. Demmel, of course, comes in, seeing he's got the pole taken, so he is good for the race. And that is it for our qualifying. Everybody's got their times in. They've all headed to the pits, so let's take you to the grid. Sven Demmel is going to be starting on the pole with David Gaspers starting in P2. Then you've got Jerry McAreevy starting in third, followed by Jason Perry in P4. Row 3 has Steve Elson to the inside, and Richard Yolland comes back once again with 6th place. Daniel Sadro, he's going to have some work to do from 7th with Zach LeVay in P8. Joe Aguilar will start in 9th, and Ian Haycox rounds out your top 10.
Yeah, and Yalin and Aguilar are not currently in the server. We'll have to see if they get back in by the time the race starts. Moving on to row 6, Adam Bradshaw alongside Ryan Sorrell. Row 7 is going to belong to Dornbeld and Kern. Row 8, Jim McGill and Jeff Jacobson. Row 9, Ramon Regalado and Tom Gradwell. And then row 10 is going to go to Gary Wolba and Anthony Carbone.
And after that, you've got William Marshall starting 21st. Ryan Walker will be 22nd. And then Edward Doherty didn't get a lap in. In fact, none of these last 4 did. Doherty tends to be pretty fast, so he will have a few cars to pass if he wants a good result. Mark Gehan will be 24th, and Andy Spicer will be P25 today. Waiting for everybody to head around for their pace lap. It is a full pace lap around here at Zandvoort that the cars will have to take. Some of them very tight turns. We might even have to go single file behind the Porsche pace car to get through clean. But last week we saw a lot of drafting on the front stretch, and while we'll see that drafting on the front stretch here and maybe some pass attempts down into Tarzan, I mean, how much passing do you really think we'll actually see out there, Adam? It's this track is kind of notorious for being difficult to get by someone.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some cases where you might have to muscle your way around somebody. I think the best passing opportunity that we're going to have is going to be particularly coming out of Lyondike, going on the front straightaway, using that draft, going into Tarzan. I think that's going to be your best opportunity every lap to be able to get around somebody. Very, very different than Phillips Island last week.
Knowing that, I wonder if, too, maybe we might see some pit stop shenanigans. Maybe drivers will try some alternate strategies if they find themselves stuck. I mean, if you can't get by on track, might as well do it with a little bit of trickery, getting a quick pit stop, as we see them now taking off behind the Porsche pace car.
Yeah, you know, and that's a point, too, because, well, our favorite Texas driver in this series, he ain't here today. At least I don't see him to tell us when the pit window opens. So, I mean, he usually has that worked out, and he's one of the first takers. Hey, by the way, Joe, only 20 cars taking the grid, at least here initially. It looks like we brought up Aguilar and Yalland. They ended up not making it back into the session before they rolled off. In addition to that, Spicer, Gehan, Doherty not making the grid here, at least initially. They will at least have to start off the pit road if they're able to get back in before the pace car comes around.
Well, we're sad to see a few less cars, but the drivers might not be. Hopefully, traffic doesn't prove to be too much of an issue out there. Another one of those headaches with a track that is difficult to pass at. They're coming up through Hunsrück and Slotemacher now. It's it's effectively a straight in these cars, but it's not straight, Adam.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's windy, it's curvy, but you're not lifting it at the same time. But that does not make it any easier to pass or not pass at all. I mean, you're going to see a lot of guys probably stay in line through there.
At least I expect that to be the case. We'll see. Maybe it'll get a little bit desperate at points if someone gets a run. And then they come through Sheavlock. This is one of those original corners that was on the old circuit. If you want to get to experience the old version, I would personally recommend giving a go at Grand Prix Legends. It's one of those games that the makers of iRacing did before they became iRacing back in Papyrus. It was honestly one of my favorite tracks to run in that game. Granted, they're going to be a little bit faster cars than these SRFs, so get ready for a hairy ride if you do try that.
You know, still kind of the same though. You know, maybe less powerful engines, but you still have the the same style suspension and everything else. I mean, but yeah, that old Grand Prix Legends. That was a hair raiser of a game for sure. I was so glad when they brought the Lotus 49 over to iRacing there a few years back. just kind of relive some of those moments.
It certainly made it a lot of fun out here as we ride on board with Jeff Jacobson farther back in the field. Everybody staying in line nice and patient. It is a long pace lap around here, unfortunately.
Makes you glad we don't have yellows.
Absolutely. There's some series that do have yellows. Hopefully we won't have to deal with those around here anytime soon. Now down into Hans Ernst and towards the very end of the lap. Very soon we'll be able to get going for round 9 of the Weekend Warriors, brought to you by the Hallett Race Shop. This is perhaps the most critical corner of the track, coming out of Kumho here, getting onto the throttle as soon as you can, powering your way through Lyondike, and then screaming down that front stretch. So as the Porsche pace car leads Sven Demmel, who's going to have control of the field in a moment. It should peel in here just a bit, and we'll go racing for 40 minutes. Pace car is in. Green flag is immediately out. There's no wait. Sven Demmel has to get on the power. Next to him, David Gaspers is about equal on that. So is McAreevy in third. It's really Jason Perry who's under threat from behind him. Steve Elson, Zach LeVay, as a side-by-side battle into Tarzan for our leaders winds up in favor of Sven Demmel. But he's coming back at him. David Gaspers not giving up, trying to go around the outside of Gerlach. He could have the inside into Hugenholtz. Could he actually get this done? Neither driver is willing to give way. And Gaspers, can he get the power down off the corner? No, it's going to swing back in favor of Sven Demmel. This is a titanic fight right off the line, Adam.
Yeah, now Gaspers pulls back in line with Sven Demmel there. Try to get through this twisty section just fine, and then you see Gaspers fall off just a little bit. I would say the big winner there was Jason Perry off the start, able to get back in line because there's a couple guys back there that got freight trained just a little bit, but he's going to settle into fourth. Now the question is, will Sven Demmel be able to, oh, look at it, Gaspers hits a little bit of the grass, steps out on him, he's able to get it back, but that's going to slow up that entire pack and lead into just exactly what I was getting ready to say. Can Sven Demmel start to pull away?
That's what he's got to hope for right now. Oh, and a big bobble from David Gaspers coming out of Zondernam. He collects it, but now he really does have a gap up to Demmel. Jerry McAreevy takes a little bit of a peek down to Hans Ernst, but everybody's going to stay in line through this tight chicane. In fact, I am not seeing any pass attempts from anybody along down through the fields. We were so focused on what happened up at the front, I think we had an incident with McGill on the first lap. I think we've got the replay pulled up. Now, I hadn't caught this at all.
Yeah. It looked like McGill had a little bit of a problem. Some of that lift throttle oversteer ended up breaking loose, tried to save it, ended up overcorrecting into Jeff Jacobson. We're going to see it right here on the GSRC replay right now. And Jim McGill, there he is. They're starting to overcorrect. And Jeff Jacobson, the unfortunate innocent bystander right there. And they both end up with damage in that. Jim McGill right now running in the back of the field along with Jeff Jacobson.
Oh, sad to see them get damaged that early. At least this one not as dependent on the aero. We're watching the leaders. Gaspers is within about 7/10 of Sven Demmel and giving chase, but it is a 5-car breakaway currently. We ride on board with Jason Perry, Spider-Man, fourth in the train. He's followed by Steve Elson behind him in P5.
Already seeing a couple of distinct packs trying to get themselves together here, and already seeing those packs actually breaking up just a little bit.
Come down through Masters, up into Namlos, and everybody just going to stay in line for this early portion of the race. The pack behind them is being led by our Spec 2 leader currently, Adam Bradshaw. We haven't covered the Spec 2 a whole lot so far this broadcast, and Bradshaw certainly doing very well without our points leader. Oh, and who is that off track? That was Elson. Zondernam, unfortunately, is a little too tricky for the number 56. A little bit of curb. Well, these SRFs don't usually like tall curbs, although that's not that tall of a curb.
Looking at it, and I think what it is he actually went over the curb just a little bit and caught a little bit of that grass, and I think that's what helped break the rear end just loose enough to where it sent him on around. And I think the real damage there was done by the Armco when he backed in, so his left rear is tweaked just a little bit, but at the same time, you mentioned a minute ago, that, Joe, that aero not as important here, so hopefully he's able to get some spots back, especially once we get near pit stop time.
Well, he's already getting at least one back there. That was Ryan Walker that he overtook. Now, we don't need to go to it, but Zach LeVay on the first 2 laps had problems in the very last corner twice in a row, and now he's having problems with the first corner on top of it. The New Yorker is clearly struggling today. He's all the way at the back of the field and not having a good time. Up at the front, Gaspers has reeled in Dimmel that I think he's now pretty safe. Looks like he's keeping touch with the current points champion. They are dropping Jerry McAreevy back in third. You can see there in the background with Spider-Man giving chase in fourth place. Now that they've dropped Elson, it is only 4 cars up at the front. A little bit of action between Ryan Walker and Tom Bradwell back in 13th place. And in fact, they're going to have another one
Sven Dimmel just giving me a heart attack there for a second. He was sliding through there, and now he's got David Gaspers all over his gearbox right now.
Pushing the car, trying to see if he could break that draft back to Gaspers. Right now, David's going to have a run and the absolute best possible place down the front stretch.
Oh, this is going to be a repeat of lap 1 right here. Just watch. They're going to go side by side here for a while. He can't completely clear him, so they're going to stay side by side. Gaspers tries to pinch him a little bit.
My goodness, this is aggressive racing at the very start of the race, and you were right. They're still wheel to wheel as Gaspers is trying to hold on to see if he can use this inside line coming through Hugenholtz.
Sven Dimmel's back in and almost breaks out. He had to get off the gas to keep out of the side of Gaspers. Not enough, though. They're still side by side.
It is a drag race on their way up to Sheavlock. And even with all this fighting, they're not losing ground to McAreevy behind them. It's going to switch back to the inside, being in favor of Sven Dimmel. This is a much faster corner, and now I think he's got it back.
Yeah, and of course, that's large part of that, why McAreevy and Perry weren't able to take advantage of that, is because they were involved in their own little battle right there. So they lost a little bit of time while they were fighting up front. That's going to serve to break apart that top 4 just a little bit into 2-car packs, assuming that they continue their battles here.
Gaspers not being around much of this season, this is kind of the fight we've been looking for. And I think we're getting a great one. Meanwhile, third place at it once again. Jerry McAreevy to the right side of Spider-Man. And, oh, that looks like a lift to me. I think Jerry's going to let him have it on the way into Hans Ernst.
Oh, and up front, Sven Dimmel putting the wheels off in the gravel again, but he's able to keep it straight. David Gaspers was all over his gearbox just a second ago, to the point that he actually had to back off the throttle to keep out of Sven Dimmel. Guys, Sven Dimmel's usually been mistake-free when he's been running up front. I've seen him make a couple already here for today, and I think Gaspers is just waiting for that one to take advantage. Gasper's already using that draft. He's coming down the front straightaway. They're heading down to Tarzan, and here we go again, going side by side.
What a fight for the lead. This time, though, Gaspers backs out of it, looks for the over-under, gets a little bit of the curb, has to recollect the rear of the car. He's going to stay in line behind Sven Dimmel. It is Club Diach versus Club Diach. I am loving this, Adam.
Yeah, they continue to fight tooth and nail going back through there. We'll have to keep an eye on this. Here in the P6 is just trading spots. We got a 3-car pack back there. That's going to be Sorrell, Bradshaw, and Haycox. And they've been going tooth and nail here for the last little bit as well. Joe, we went into today not expecting a lot of passing, and it looks like we've been wrong so far. These guys are trading spots all over the place here in these little packs.
I'm glad to be wrong, if I'm honest. This is significant because this is the battle for the Spec 2 lead. Sorrell in front of Bradshaw. Haycox is in Spec 1, so he's not involved in this fight. Of course, Ian, one of the drivers that has been running in the Lotus 49 series recently, we've seen on Saturday mornings, coming on over to give a go at a little bit of a slower car. Oh, he's got a great run coming off of Zandvoort, though. Not enough of a run, just too short of a straight down to Hans Ernst. Bradshaw is going to stay safe in that P7. So we wondered about the pit stops, if that would play a role in this race. Well, that pit window is opening up now. 30 minutes left to go. It's a nice little fight between Regalado and Walker for 11th place. Walker comes out on top. As they've been battling, they've been following Steve Elson, who's been creeping away, but not at the pace I think he would have wanted.
Yeah, and looking at, once again, going a little bit further up, Bradshaw taking P6 back away from Sorrell, and here comes Haycox. He was looking to take advantage of it for just a second. Bradshaw still retains that P6 now. Sorrell trying to come back at him, is under his gearbox. While that is going on, you're looking at Bob Kern being able to race up there, trying to make this a 4-car pack.
Kern's made up a number of spots. He started this race 14th. He's now in 9th. I'm sure he's licking his chops, wondering if maybe he could get even more. They're working their way up towards Shevelock. Sorrell chasing in the blue and white machine, the green, white, and orange to Adam Bradshaw. And unfortunately not going to get the opportunity out of there up to Masters. They're all going to stay in line. 1, 2, 3. Not missing anything up at the front. Gaspers has since taken a break from his attacks on Demmel and has been staying in 2nd place. Look at that. Wow. He's getting awful close to Bradshaw there from what we saw.
Where I think Gaspers right now is just in a position where he's just trying to fill up Sven's mirrors without really attacking. You've got Adam Bradshaw and Ryan Sorrell. They're not just filling up the mirrors. They're, well, filling up everything from either side.
The tailpipe.
Trade spots.
Yeah, I think there was a little touch there as Bradshaw got bumped from behind by Sorrell, but no harm, no foul. And again, this is for our Spec 2 lead, so these are drivers fighting for a championship. Haycox just kind of waiting behind, looking for something safe to get by. He doesn't have quite as much at stake here, although there are points that he can gain by getting by them. Ryan Sorrell is going to duck to the inside, so is Haycox. Thinks better of a 3-wide situation, though. And Ryan is going to move himself up to 6th overall. And I think the damage on Elson is enough that he's going to take an early stop. I expect a fresh car to pop into place for this 56. And there you go. So, Elson with the early stop. Anybody else going to follow?
There's going to be a couple of regulars that I think are going to be taking that fresh car between Ramon Regalado, Zachary LeVay, Bob Kern. I think all those guys will be taking fresh cars whenever they make their way down pit road.
Right on board with the battle for 3rd. Perry in front of McAreevy. And though McAreevy is looking, there's no passes quite yet, keeping Spider-Man under threat. In fact, Jason going defensive into Zondernam. Hopefully that shallow entry doesn't hurt him, because look at how close that Jerry McAreevy is. Is he brave enough to try a pass down into Hans Ernst? Nope, he's just going to wait behind him.
See, and this is another one where while these two guys are essentially playing with each other, trying to put pressure on one another, you've got Daniel Sadro back there that is gaining about 0.4 of a second a lap on him, and he'll be up to him before they know it. So they've got to be careful not to add another car to this battle, another ingredient to the mix, because the way things are going in this race, I mean, that could be the difference. Hey, up front, just want to update everybody up front. I watched David Gaspers put a wheel off just a little while ago, and that really opened it up, the distance between him and Sven Demmel. So not missing anything up front right now. In fact, that gap continues to widen. David Gaspers has had to go into drive to try to keep up mode.
The side-by-side battle is great, though, as McAreevy manages to hold ahead of Perry. Oh, big slide, though.
Slide. Doing it again.
The crest of Gerlach is certainly proving to be tough, even for this car. And Jason Perry gets the launch off the corner. I'm not sure if it's enough, though.
That right there was the sportsmanship / racing maturity of Jason Perry. He saw that McAreevy was sliding, knew that car could really snap in any direction. He actually backed off instead of trying to take advantage of it. So smart move by Perry, and he's able to stay right there.
Coming now out of Masters, up towards Namlos, and he's not going to duck it into this first hairpin. Maybe try something into Zondernam. Nope. Also going to wait, though he took a little bit of a look. Maybe that's just his line. Maybe he doesn't like to track out fully. And he and McAreevy are in a little bit of a stalemate with a little more than half the race to go.
I'm just looking at Perry, and I'm thinking that it's not so much a stalemate. I think he's faster than McAreevy and definitely the more technical parts of the track. I think he's just riding behind him at this point. I wonder if he's trying to save just enough fuel to maybe try to leapfrog him when they come down pit road here in a little while.
That's a fair point. Might be a little early to try and get a pit stop, since you could wind up in traffic. We'll see if either of them ducks in here. And it doesn't look like either, so they're going to stay out.
See, what I'm thinking of, and of course Perry's going to go ahead and try to make a move here, but even if it's just that couple of, a tenth or two of a second, if they come in on the same lap, that'd be enough to be able to at least get around them. But Perry going to go ahead and take the spot right now.
Oh, remember Ian Haycox was a part of that fight for, I believe it was 6th place. And unfortunately, he had a big wreck coming out of Kumho.
Yeah, and I'm seeing Adam Bradshaw also we've been watching, and he ended up into the tires as well. In fact, that happened right in front of Ian Haycox.
Almost exactly like each other. I wonder if that was target fixation, Adam.
Yeah, hey, we've all been a victim of it at one time or another, and that's very well what it could have been. Ian Haycox, unfortunately, was the one that ended up pointing the wrong direction, where Adam Bradshaw was able to get it around Lion Dyke and take it right onto pit road. But even in the process of getting it onto pit road, I mean, he got very close to the Armco there.
As that was happening, Perry did get by McAreevy up into 3rd. So those have swapped around once more. They see the two of them heading onto the back stretch down towards Hans Ernst. Still not many top drivers having pitted. Elson is our highest pitter so far. Kearns come in, Bradshaw, as we just mentioned, Jeff Jacobson, and I see Francois Van Dornveld, but I think he actually started for pit lane.
Yeah, he's been kind of riding it back. I think he's just kind of in a mode where he's just picking off spots by attrition, Dornveld, that is. But right now, Sven Demmel, he's racing comfortably now, especially since Gaspers had that mistake a little while ago, but Gaspers is still right there, and all it's going to take is one mistake by Sven Demmel to pull him right back up. So, in fact, going a little wide there through Tarzan.
We've got a 2-wide situation for 3rd once again, and it's Perry to the inside of McAreevy, who went on the attack into Tarzan, and it didn't work. So Perry holds on to 3rd. This race is honestly going by very quickly, Adam.
It is. I mean, lots of action in this one. And right now, one guy that really wants to see Perry and McAreevy continue to fight like that we've talked about is Sadra, because every time they get side by side with each other, Sadra gains a couple of tenths on him. Now, still has a little ways to go, but before too long, he'll be in their draft and able to suck up to the back of him, particularly down the front straightaway. So Sadra was like, keep fighting, boys.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd love that. The 51 is certainly losing enough points to Demmel as it currently sits. He'd like to get on the podium to at least continue the number of ones that he's racked up so far this season. Now, 21 minutes left on the clock. Many of the drivers coming around will be hitting that halfway point exactly as they reach the pit entry. Who's going to split it perfectly in half? And who's going to try and run it all the way out to the end? Watch our leaders come through Kumho. That is Demmel in the HJ Motorsports blue and yellow. You see up ahead. Oh, and a mistake from David Gaspers. He manages to keep it pointed forward, but he loses precious time.
And not only does he lose precious time, and we've been talking about aero not mattering too much, but he did ding up that front air dam quite a bit. So he's going to be, I think he might be the one who wants to take his fast repair if he understands how much damage he has in the front end now.
Wow, what a rocket this is. And the fact that he didn't lose the car is pretty impressive. So the number 23 stays in second place, but he's all 4.2 seconds behind Sven Demmel after chasing him for much of the race.
And just when I was getting ready to say the pressure would be off Sven Demmel, all he needs to do is turn laps. He goes ahead and slides it through that last corner, but still didn't lose hardly any time.
So Jerry McAreevy's going to keep applying pressure to Jason Perry to see if he could pry away that third position that he had for a little while. Their way through Masters, both of them nice and smooth. Then into the first hairpin of two, into Namlos, followed up by Zondernam, left-hander. Then you get to put the throttle down fully for quite a while.
And while they've been fighting, Daniel Sadro has been able to knock off another 0.6 of a second off those guys. So he's sitting right now at about 2 seconds back. So, well, now it looks like 2.2. So he lost just a touch, but Sadro overall still continuing to gain on these two. I'm telling you, Joe, that's going to be a battle before this race is over. Sadro's going to get up to these guys.
I'm looking forward to it if that's the case, because I have a feeling all of those three are going to be elbows out for the end of the race. And it looks like Gaspers is going to pit. Yes, indeed. David Gaspers, multi-time champion, hits the pit lane nice and smooth. And let's see if he takes a spare car. Here you can see the damage on the front left. Doesn't look like a lot, but when you're working in the margins that the top two are, they can be all important. Indeed, it pops back into place. David Gasper is going to be running at 100% once again.
Now we'll see what Sven Demmel does here this next time around. I would think that he would go ahead and come down pit road.
You would think, but we've been surprised by drivers' strategy before. Meanwhile, oh my goodness, this thing just will not quit. It was a battle for third. Now it's a battle for second, since both Perry and McAreevy had not stopped yet. Sadro staying at about 2.2 seconds behind, hasn't gained much since we last looked at him. Jason Perry swinging a little bit wider than McAreevy. And once again, he doesn't track fully out all the way to the right side on their way into that second hairpin. Oh, that 67 is awful close this time. And I think this time he's aggressive enough that he's thinking about it. No, just not quite there.
think that was a smart choice there.
I agree. I think if it was the last lap, I'd say go for it, but not when you've got 16 minutes left on the clock. And with 16 minutes left, Sven Dimmel says it's not time to pit quite yet. In fact, David Gaspers, I think, has he had to overtake some cars? Yes, he has. So this might not actually work out in favor. Oh, and Gaspers actually had an off on this lap. A scary off. I don't know if we can go back to this, maybe about a minute ago. Oh, meanwhile, as on screen, I was watching the replay on my screen. Here you can see McAreevy and Perry keeping up the fight. So he's back coming out of Sheavelock before Masters. He was trying to get by, I believe.
Top 10, this is it right here on your screen. And look at, we need to go to an onboard of this and just watch Gaspers work the wheel to keep that car straight. That was a masterful job of being off-road and being able to come away with only just a scratched up front air dam. It wasn't even as bad as his last off, but I think it's going to hurt him in time. But man, just look at him work the wheel here.
Yeah, I think he got caught out. That's Gradwell in front of him. Didn't expect him to be that slow. Car had to check up. Jeez, he built a house with all the sawing that he did.
I mean, that's just incredible.
Well, great job to him. I'm sure he would have liked a clean lap instead. He's up to 5th now with a few more cars having come in. Sven Dimmel's not one of them yet. He does
now
have
you're Sven. You know, if he has somebody watching and knows the trouble that Gaspers just had,
yeah.
You know, you run that tank dry. Like you take it all the way down as far as you possibly can at this point.
And that's exactly what he's doing. The 22 stays out. What about McAreevy and Perry still fighting for second place? They've lost it to 1.7 seconds to the car behind. Perry's going to pit. McAreevy is not. Sadro also stays out. I would have thought that it'd be McAreevy coming in before Perry with him trailing.
Now, we talked about pit road. Possibly, you know, entrance. Okay, so I watched Jerry McAreevy as Jason Perry came down pit road in front of him, and he actually had to lift out of the throttle because he was intending on following Jason Perry down the front straightaway. Now, ultimately, what did that end up costing him? Well, that cost him about another 1/10 to 2/10 going back to Daniel Sadro. Daniel Sadro is almost within the point where he's going to be able to start feeling the draft of Jerry McAreevy as they go down the front straightaway.
And Jason Perry has timed this pit stop to perfection. He's come out in completely clear track, so he can put the pedal down and try to get as many fast laps as he can in before Jerry McAreevy comes in. But how many laps is that going to be? Will the 67 respond, or will he stay out? Especially if McAreevy gets caught by Sadro and those two get into a fight, it'd behoove McAreevy to come in as soon as possible, I would think.
Yeah, especially since Jason Perry right now has clean air. Sadro continues to close. McAreevy feels something is up, and he's really trying to push his car right now. There's been a couple of times on this lap that he's pushed his car so hard it's left skid marks on the road there. So he is really trying to edge this thing out. But ultimately, if I'm seeing him push the car that much, he's probably pushing it too hard, and that's going to cost him some time as we're watching our leader, Sven Dimmel, coming down pit road.
The HJ Motorsports number 22 looks for his stall. This was a fight with David Gaspers, who's currently coming around Kumho. Let's see if the offs that David Gaspers had is enough to cost him the draft to Sven Dimmel. Dimmel's coming out just now. You can see the 23 has speed, so he's going to gain a little bit of time, but it's a very short run from the pit exit to the first corner, and Sven Dimmel is a long ways ahead.
And in all that, Sadro also decided to come down pit road. He's coming out now, and Sadro going to come out in front of Jason Perry.
And the pit stop times are comparable. Did Perry just have a bad outlap or something? That is fascinating. Sadro was only about a second faster.
He had a 220 outlap right there, where, let's take Gaspers, for example, when you saw the problems he had when he had to saw on the wheel, had a 218 outlap. I'm going quickly through his lap here, and I don't see anything that went wrong. Maybe it's just slower through a few corners, but he didn't have any offs or anything. So, but that definitely changes that complexion. Now we're going to have to see where McAreevy comes out whenever he decides to come down pit road.
McAreevy is temporarily our leader. He and Zach LeVay are the last two that still need to pit in this race. The UKNI driver comes out of Hans Ernst.
David Gaspers is off again. I was just getting ready to comment the fact that Sven Demmel, all he's got to do right now is ride, and David Gaspers just proved me right by making another off and losing quite a bit of time to Sven Demmel.
I talked about Sven making mistakes today, and I'd say this is an unusual amount of mistakes from Gaspers too.
Well, they swap places. I mean, David Gaspers was very mistake-free in the first 15 minutes of this race, where Sven Demmel was sliding. You know, he was having slide-offs just enough to lose it and keep the edge on David Gaspers, or David Gaspers could keep him in sight, where now Sven Demmel has been mistake-free since the pressure went off, and David Gaspers is the one that's feeling the pressure and seeing Sven Demmel get further and further and further away, and he can't do anything about it. So there you go, and they pretty much swap places on that regard.
You can see on your screen that Perry's gotten back past Daniel Sadro. Sadro's not even interested in passing. He just wants to get the pace up, gave him a bump draft, and that worked because Jerry McAreevy comes out way behind.
Yeah, McAreevy is ultimately going to lose 2 spots right there based on that pit stop and probably waiting. The advantage there, I think, went to both Jason Perry and Daniel Sadro for the most part, coming out in clean air, having clean pit exits and everything else. And now ultimately Perry was able to get back to Sadro and get around him thanks to the draft, but McAreevy isn't even in touch with the draft on Sadro.
You know what amazes me, no matter how fast you are, there's always seems to be someone faster, and David Gaspers looked untouchable at times, and yet Sven Demmel is now practically running away from him to the extent that Gaspers is so rattled, we've been seeing mistakes from him, which I can try to remember the last time we've seen Gaspers do the things that he's done today. There's our leader, the number 22, up at the top at a 7.5 second gap.
So what that's going to do is put the battle on the racetrack. We still got a couple, but I think the one to watch will be Perry and Sadro. Here in a little bit, Elson and Walker. It's going to be a good battle to the finish in the last quarter of this race. And even going back further in the grid, McGill, Jacobson, Wobel, they're going to be having a nice battle for 14th, 15th, and 16th here in the last few minutes.
That's Elson in the 56 that you saw on your screen. And this is a disappointing race for Steve. He started it in 5th. He's only up to 8th, and I don't think he's going to manage to get back into the top 5 after his early problem coming out of Zondernam. You can see Walker in the orange car still chasing him onto the front stretch.
But Steve's also, knows that it's not necessarily the end of the road. The bottom line is that he'll be able to finish, assuming nothing happens, and be able to take home the maximum points that he could. So what that's going to do is those 3 drops that he has, I mean, if you can lead those to maybe, a race that something happened to you down in the stretch. I mean, we're starting to head to the home stretch of the season, so, ultimately, though, you want to try to use your drops in all the races that you finish just to take away your 3 worst finishes, and as he slides it right there, and Walker has to get out of the gas to avoid him. But, I think ultimately Elson will be okay.
Elson taking it deep into Tarzan there for that side-by-side battle with Walker. Walker's going to come back at him, but we talked about the way this track weaves back and forth on the way up to Shevlock, so he unfortunately has to get out of it and stay behind. They're giving chase on Ryan Sorrell, and they're not too far behind him, so they could move up to a battle for 6th. That'll be fun if they do get up to the 216, who is currently our Spec 2 leader.
The other battle I've been watching, and I told you he'd be involved in that fight for third, Sadro. I've been watching him here the last little bit, taking very different lines from what Jason Perry is through some of these more technical sections. Now, ultimately, who's going to win out in that? Well, we've got about another 6 minutes here before we see the answer to that. But I'm not really seeing him gain a whole lot on him except in the draft portions of the racetrack in places that they're more onto the full throttle. That's where, of course, the draft takes more hold. Sadro's able to get up to him. So if Sadro's going to make a move around Jason Perry, it's probably going to be into turn one. And if I'm Sadro, I mean, I'd be trying to leapfrog him here a little bit occasionally. In fact, you see him right now making a move on the front straightaway, but Jason Perry's going to make him take a look to the outside. It's all about keeping in touch with him right now, just for the final podium spot on the racetrack.
Tries to get that over-under, and it just doesn't quite work for Sadro. I think we've had more problems with Ian Haycox. Remember, he had a spin out of Kumho, and this time it's the corner before through Hans Ernst. That sends him all the way down to 16th position. There you see, just loops it around, doesn't hit anything, but unfortunately it's a tight spot. Yeah, he has to do a few K-turns before he can eventually get going.
Hey, that pack for six that you were watching, you were talking about Elson maybe getting up to Ryan Sorrell. Well, he's there. It's now a three-car battle for sixth position.
He's only got a couple laps to do something. We are just about 5 minutes left to go, so I believe we're looking at 3 laps left on the clock. This is going to be a little bit of a hustle for Steven to try and get himself into the top 6 as he gets right up to the back of Ryan Sorrell coming through Zondernam. Excuse me, Namlos. Wide coming off. That's where he had his problems before.
Yeah, Elson definitely kind of dove it in there. I actually think he's just trying to wait patiently for the right moment to attack here, but Sorrell almost kind of taking these corners a little bit more gingerly than the two guys behind him. So I think that'll play a role. He's not being aggressive. He knows he doesn't want to throw the race away, but at the same time, you know, he wants to win that S2 category here for today, and he's got to be careful not to let Walker by him because that's 1-2 right now, and they only have Elson separating.
I don't know how much longer they're going to have Elson separating them because he's got a great run onto the front stretch.
Probably all through about the next 300 feet.
There you go. Popping to the inside. The 56 has a nose ahead. And once they get to the braking of Tarzan, I think he's got it done. That moves Elson up to 6th finally.
Something to watch out for here. Sorrell's been by himself for so long. He hasn't had to follow anybody for so long. How is he going to follow Elson?
It's a good question. And is he going to try and fight back, too? Now that Elson's gotten by, could he use the same maneuver to retake him on the front stretch? He's staying right with him, and giving watch is Ryan Walker. Do we see a move from Ryan Walker as well? Does he try to get in the mix at the last moment?
Yeah, something for these guys to think about here, and that goes for the Perry-Sadro battle, too, is that it's like you want to get around these guys, but with such little time left in this race, you don't want to give them too much time to be able to get back around you. So I think a little bit of patience here might not be a bad idea.
2 laps left to go once they reach the line. Closest battle at the top is for 3rd, at least overall. And then we were watching there the Spec 2 battle for the lead. This is Jason Perry, currently sitting in 3rd. Daniel Sadro right behind him. He's about 7/10 back. How much is he going to gain this time around coming out of Lyondike? 6/10 now. They cross the start-finish line. 5/10. He's gaining a lot.
He's gained a lot in that draft, but Sadro lost a lot through the technical portion of the racetrack right there, and that's not going to help him. But Jason Perry sliding through Tarzan will help him. I think the key right now is for Sadro to stay tucked up there. If he can make a move on the front straightaway here of this upcoming lap, or maybe even a little bit sooner, if Jason Perry makes a mistake, I don't know if Jason Perry will have enough time to get back by him, but he's going to have to get a big run and get really solidify his position going into one this time by, I think, to make it happen.
Well, that was going on. Sorrell made a dive to the outside, I believe it was, of Elson. Oh, and Elson goes off. Elson loses momentum coming out of Hugenholtz. This is critical because you can see he's already side by side with Ryan Sorrell. He's fully passed. Ryan gets back into 6th place. Oh, but it's not over yet. He dives it in deep into Sheavelock. Rare that you can see drivers go too wide through there, but Elson pulls it off. Gutsy stuff.
Looked like he almost pinched Sorrell just a little bit right there to be able to give himself some clearance, but it was a move that worked. Now just a few car lengths separating them. And of course, Ryan Walker right there in the spot that Soup likes to call the popcorn position.
Meanwhile, our leader is taking the white flag as he flies down the front stretch. David Gaspers has no answer. He's dropped back to 10 seconds behind. The battle for 3rd is very, very close. And Jason Perry has got to be looking at his mirrors because Daniel Sadro, now in his tire tracks, uses the slipstream along the pit straight, but he's going to be forced around the outside. This hasn't worked for Sadro before. Can he manage to use the banking this time around? Tarzan, he's looking good on the high side. Can he keep the speed off of it? I think he does. It's going to continue on its way, its climb up to Gerlach. He starts to lose out a little bit, and finally he's able to cover off Sadro. Jason Perry keeps 3rd for the moment.
That right there, I think, is the move that gave Jason Perry 3rd place in this race. We'll have to see if Daniel Sadro is able to come back on him here just a little bit, but Jason Perry running a very defensive line. He's able to hold him back here for now, and if he's able to keep holding him back, I don't think Sadro is going to have enough time to run to the flag to be able to get by him.
Maybe not a run to the flag, but could he get sneaky down into Hans Ernst? It all depends on how aggressive he wants to be. It's kind of do or die time because he's already losing points to Demmel. He could try to keep racking up these podiums, but he's got to beat Demmel or at least minimize how many points he loses. So I'd say if I was Sadro, I'd just go for it.
Ooh, Jason Perry makes the mistake that Sadro was waiting for, puts 2 wheels off. That's going to cost him just enough. Is he going to be able to get alongside of him? Jason Perry pulls back in line. Sadro actually backs off a little bit going into the corner here. Doesn't want to get into him.
And we've got to go to our leader because off of Lyondike, the HJ Motorsports driver racks up another victory. It was only 1 time away from the top spot for Sven Demmel as he wins here at Zandvoort and puts one over on one of the fastest drivers we've ever seen in the SRF, David Gaspers, who takes 2nd. This is Perry and Sadro. Daniel does have the slipstream. This is going to be awful close. The line comes up in a little bit, and it's too little too late for Daniel Sadro. Perry finishes 3rd.
Yeah, going back further, you'll have Jerry McAreevy coming home in 5th, and then Steven Elson in 6th, but it's going to be a battle of the line between Sorrell and Walker, and Sorrell is going to be able to edge him off Lyondike. He's going to go ahead and take 7th position.
That was for the Spec 2 win. Nicely done by Sorrell. Meanwhile, we jump back to Jeff Jacobson, who is currently trying to attack Jim McGill. This is for P13 at the same time that he's holding off Gary Wobolt, and they are very close to each other. This might even give one of them the chance to slipstream by before the start-finish line. Jacobson is looking very good. He gets a fantastic run. He's going to pull off to the side, but he is a few feet short. Awful tight stuff.
And
that is going to...
Yeah, that's about it. Once Dorenvald comes across the line, that'll be it. And he's getting ready to work his way through Lyondike here in just a second. So I think it's safe to go ahead and, well, throw it to you, Joe.
Absolutely. We're going to take a little bit of a break here on the Global Sim Racing channel. We'll come back after we show you all the upcoming races here on GSRC. But stick around, because after that, you can see the unofficial results as well as driver interviews. Welcome back to Circuit Zandvoort. I'd say we got a fantastic race here today in the SRFs. And Sven Demmel, though he fought hard with David Gaspers at the start, unfortunately for David, a few mistakes put him out of contention, and Sven romped away with another one. Gaspers did manage second, and Jason Perry with a well-earned podium just ahead of Daniel Sadro. He's got to start beating Sven Demmel a little bit more than this, unfortunately. That fourth will unfortunately lose him points to Sven. Jerry McAreevy takes P5 with Stephen Elson finishing in 6th. Stephen spun his car in the first couple laps and fell down the order, only to recover to this spot. Ryan Sorrell wins the Spec 2 race today in 7th, just barely ahead of Ryan Walker, who takes 8th overall. Ramon Regalado finishes 9th, and Bob Kern, sort of a quiet top 10 for him.
Yeah, and then, of course, coming home in 11th position, Tom Bradwell. He's able to recover some of his problems. Zachary LeVay was able to recover from some of his problems and bring it home still in 12th position. Jim McGill, Jeff Jacobson, both having, a lot of these guys having problems here at some point during the race. Gary Wolbolt in 15th. Ian Haycox had multiple issues. Adam Bradshaw, 17th. It was not the day that Adam Bradshaw had wanted to have. Francois Van Dornveld, he was the last one to finish and finished on the lead lap. William Marshall coming home in 19th. 20th belonged to Anthony Carbone Jr. And the rest of these guys on this board from 21st on back did not take the green flag today.
So let's go to talk to our winner, Sven Demmel, about another victory. He missed out last week, but returns victorious. Sven, you and David were just going at it at the start of the race. Were you guys not worried at all about Perry and McAreevy gaining on you?
No, I didn't think about that at all. I just wanted to have some fun racing, and yeah, going side by side with a competent driver is a lot of fun, and there is no way I would ever miss it just because I'm afraid of like losing time or even wrecking.
Clearly not today, because the side-by-side racing was incredibly impressive between you two. Eventually, you managed to get a mistake out of him, but that's not before your own first couple of mistakes. Did you have to shake off the rust a little bit to battle for the front?
Did I make big mistakes? I had some slides here and there, but like nothing big. I didn't put a wheel off anywhere. I didn't have to save anything as far as I remember. So I felt pretty confident, even though I didn't have like a lot of practice this week. I only had the 7 laps I did in the practice session, and yeah, I was still learning in the first few laps, so I guess it looked a little rough at some points, but yeah.
Well, that puts guys like Adam and I to shame even more. Only 7 laps of practice. Yeah, it maybe looked a little bit more slippery from our perspective up in the booth than maybe it did from the cockpit. Well, glad to hear that you had it under control. This was a fantastic track to see racing at here with a Spec Racer, and we're getting a little bit of a similar race at Mid-Ohio next week. Have you had much experience at that circuit?
Yeah, I've driven that circuit, and I think even in this car before, but like 4 years ago. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's difficult with all the elevation change. The car really doesn't like sudden changes there, and yeah, it's going to be a really interesting race, I think. It has a really long straight, so you can definitely see some good passes going like into the corner after the back straight.
Excellent stuff. That was our winner today, Sven Dimmel, here at Zandvoort. And Adam has caught up with the driver that was fighting with him. We mentioned David Gaspers.
Yeah, and David, great drive for today, being able to bring it home ultimately in second. I know you were probably disappointed you didn't have a shot to win, but I got to tell you, I don't know if you're familiar with iRacing's top 10 that they have on YouTube. You had a save during this race, and I am going to label a top 10 nominee for the month of May because, wow, you proved what kind of a wheelman you are saving that SRF.
Yeah, but I think that was more luck than skill.
Hey, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. I'll tell you that. But, you had a really strong run in the first about 15, 20 minutes of the race. You were able to keep Sven in sight and even able to get alongside of a few points. Great battles, everything else. So at what point do you feel like the race got away from you?
I was really struggling with track temperatures. I never had above 25 Celsius before, and I think the race was above 40. And I was really struggling in the last corner onto the long straight and going out on the curb there. And I think I went too wide a few times, bottomed out, and almost lost the car once. And then I damaged my car there because of that I pitted.
Well, I know you're not able to make every single one of these races, but the races that you are, we know you're fast in the Spec Racer Ford. Are we going to be able to see it Mid-Ohio? Because, I mean, we're talking about a similar kind of track, and are you going to be able to put these leaders on notice as they make their run to the championship?
I don't know. We've had Mid-Ohio so often in the past few seasons that I got a little bored.
I understand that. Well, hey, David, great job on that second place finish here for today. And if we do see you next week, hopefully get another podium out of it.
Yeah.
And I think Joe will be able to catch up with Jason Perry.
Absolutely. Perry finishing on the podium, but only just. Jason, Sadro was given a real run for your money at the end there.
Hey, Joe. Nice to talk to you again so soon after last week. Yeah, good race with Dan at the end and fun with Jerry during the middle of the race. I think I was faster than Dan, but obviously the draft takes a big effect down that front straight.
It certainly allowed him to have a few goes at you, but speaking of that front stretch, we were kind of worried about the pit in and the way that drivers use that draft, and then suddenly, without warning, they're going to break for the pit entry. Were you a little bit worried that maybe Jerry would get into you, or did you get on the radio and let him know that you were coming in?
No, I wasn't in communication with Jerry there. I think he was on my outside. If he was directly behind me, I wasn't aware of that, so I probably would have been worried. There is a bit of you don't have to slow down. You can sort of pull over a little bit before you have to get on the brakes. So I think you'd probably be safe anyway, unless people were actually chasing you into the pit lane to grab a bit of draft.
Oh, glad to hear that you were blissfully unaware, because it gave us a little bit of a moment from up in the booth. Now you've grabbed another podium, but it seems that Sven has just been untouchable, and now that David Gaspers has come back, it's kind of a battle for best of the rest. So, I mean, what are you eyeing in terms of points? Is this something where you just forget about it and go for fun out there on track?
Yeah, definitely. I have no idea where I am in the championship. So I'm not around next week. I'm going to miss Mid-Ohio, which is a shame. That always gives us good racing there. And then probably going to miss Charlotte, which I'm not upset about missing at all, particularly in this car. So yeah, I'm just here to have fun and have some good racing with friends.
Yeah, Charlotte should be, let's say, a wild one from our experience with this car there. So congratulations once again on the third place. Hopefully we'll get to talk to you some more before the season's out.
Thanks, Joe. Take care.
That was Jason Perry, eking 1/10 of a second across the line ahead of Sadro to take that podium. That's how tight it was at the end. Once again, we want to give a thank you to the sponsor of this season of the Weekend Warriors, the Hallett Race Shop. You can find them at hallettracing.net if you want to see how they can help you.